Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. Thank you for joining us.
So Reverend Caballero ended her reflection with a kind of petition, which she addressed to the giver of life. She wrote, "Help me to approach this moment, this day, this week, month, this year, this life as an adventure whose ending I do not yet know. Allow me to embrace each plot twist without self-blame or despair, but with innocent wonder. May each change be savored and each accompanying emotion be fully felt, that I may fully live." Whew, fully live. Please, yes, I will take that. But how is it possible to live fully in the midst of ambiguity? Can we savor or maybe even crave not knowing? Now, perhaps you can tell just by looking at me that I like sugar. When I was a little girl, my family lived in a country parsonage next to the church where my father served. I used to, and this is a true confession, I used to sneak into the church kitchen and eat spoonfuls of brown sugar. I'm addicted. I really crave sugar. Mostly, I can control this, but at least so far I really have not been willing, I don't want to be willing to try to eliminate this craving because I like it. So let's not talk about that anymore. I use this example only so that I might help you to conjure up what it feels like to crave something. You know, for me, it's sugar. For you, it might be some other substance or exercise endorphins or sunshine or sex or reality TV or you name it. I'd really be surprised if even one among you cannot imagine what it feels like to crave. To not be able to wait until you experience that thing again, to think about it a little too incessantly. Could it be possible to have that feeling, that craving about not knowing? To crave living in ambiguity? For those of us who would like to believe we know it all, a state of not knowing is something to be avoided, though we must tolerate it because, of course, it's impossible to know everything or to be in control of everything. We simply cannot know. We just don't. Still, to crave being in a state of not knowing, I think that's a challenge. Now, earlier this week, my horoscope had something to say about this. It suggested that a craving, isn't always on a person. A food, a hiking trail, a shirt could be crush-worthy, said my horoscope. Anything that inspires you, and it said at least on that particular day I should be open to what lights me up and then follow it. So what if you had a crush on not knowing, an infatuation with that experience, what many people call beginner's mind, simply because of how it makes us feel, lit up, addicted to its deliciousness so much that we would follow it anywhere, follow our curiosity. I've had a few crushes in my life, although I'm not really a fangirl. I don't tend to attach myself to celebrities or sports teams, but still I've had crushes, being fascinated, drawn in by somebody's presence. The way your smile just beams. The way you sing off key, the way you haunt my dreams. No, you can't take that curiosity, that craving, that crushing away from me, from us. Or maybe you can, because it's really far too easy to go through life not curious and wanting to know. We like to think of ourselves as curious beings, and of course we humans are. though perhaps we are more infatuated with knowing, with facts, with truth. Or better, maybe it is that we're infatuated with feeling like we do know it all and that we're right. It seems to me that everywhere I turn these days, though admittedly the spaces in which I turn are perilously homogeneous, everywhere I turn, people are talking about the need to spend more time in the presence of difference, to be able to converse with those with different perspectives, to look for solutions that are palatable for a diversity of needs, to get comfortable with discomfort, with not knowing. Wednesday night, I attended the Attorney General's Forum on the Future of HCMC, which was held as a space for the community to express itself. And I heard a bunch of opinions. On Thursday night, I attended the UNITO's Monarcha training here, which focused on forming networks of neighbors by listening to learn what's important to each of them. And recently, Heather Cox Richardson, who I know many of you follow, she quoted the political scientists Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt as saying that democracies depend on members of each party recognizing the legitimacy of their partisan rivals. Now, I know we are worried about the future of democracy, but can we accept that true democracy comes when we accept the legitimacy of different positions, when we're curious about them? Then yesterday's email from Pete Buttigieg, I'm sure you all get his emails. Pete, my buddy Pete, he spoke of how people across this country in red states, blue states, and everywhere in between are hungry for a democracy that feels more accountable to ordinary citizens. Red states, blue states, all of us. Being together in those ways demands that we're curious, we're interested, we're open to respecting, to learning about, and even understanding different points of view. Of course, we won't all agree, but that doesn't mean we can't be curious. Now, earlier this month, I spoke about being curious for its own sake because of what the feelings it brings up in us, these feelings of awe and wonder, about being curious without having a goal of figuring something out, but rather just to exist in that state of not knowing. I think such a state is just good for our hearts and our spirits. It's like meditation, being present to what is, with a little added dimension of an engaged awareness of the unknown that surrounds us in every single moment. Today I want to speak about so what? Almost every paper I turned in to my seminary professor, Rosemary Radford Ruther, was returned to me with that question in red ink at the top. So what? Why does this matter? Why be curious about curiosity itself? Why crave a curious mind, a curious life? Well, here's the thing. The thing was stated in our opening words. When we release ourselves from the need to know, we make space for a new breath, new healing, new possibility to take root. A new breath, a new healing, a new possibility, that breath of fresh air that this country needs, that hard-won feeling that comes from facing ourselves honestly, that yet-to-be-discovered future which might even, cross our fingers, hold the things that we dream of. When we let go of the need to know, new futures open up to us. And the truth is we can't know. We can't know what's going to happen. We can't know which of our efforts will take root and grow. We can't know. But as Reverend Chad told you a couple weeks ago, not knowing does not preclude us from acting. Krista Tippett's interview this week was with author Micah Pollan about the evolution of consciousness, and spoke of how the reality of being conscious can tend to lead us to feeling special, kind of self-satisfied, like we're the only ones who've got that. I learned in that conversation that the roots of the words conscious and conscience are the same. The Latin sciri, to know. Consciousness is self-awareness, being able to observe ourselves. And conscientiousness is to know our connection with what's not us. and then to practice turning our attention and care toward how one lives and acts. Isn't this the epitome of humanism? To turn our attention and care toward how we live and how we act? And I believe that being curious about all that surrounds us greatly contributes to our ability to make the best choices about how to live and act conscientiously. Our curiosity practiced in this moment, this day, this week, month, this year, this life can lead us on this adventure whose ending we cannot yet know. If we can savor, crave being curious, it will help open us to worlds yet unknown, to perspectives not yet understood, to manifestations of humanity unlike our own, to learning how the choices made by others have led to their flourishing or their demise, to open ourselves to possibility. Here's two things about this. First, another seminary professor, Jeffrey Kwan, taught that the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, is descriptive, not prescriptive. In other words, it's not a source of advice for how we should live, but rather describes how a particular people in a particular time lived and made choices. That doesn't mean we have to agree with them, that we don't have to make the same choices they did, but we can learn from their stories. Stories from long ago, fact or fiction, and stories from those we encounter today, we can learn from them. Second, I consider myself a student of process theology, which is based in the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead, and which speaks of existence as continual evolution. We're never, ever fully done. No one minute has a beginning and an end because it's always changing. Our evolution is dependent on three things: our past, our present, which includes all the influences around us in the present, and the lure of the future in whatever way it's calling to us. And that could be God, but it could be prosperity or beauty or love or health or some combination of these things. Each moment of our becoming concresces, in the language of process theology, concresces or comes into being because of these three things: the past, the present, the future. Anyway, it follows that an awareness of all that surrounds us and being curious about it enriches and improves our ability to make choices about who to be and how to act in the world, including which values to hold dear. If we're not curious, if we're not open to being influenced, we won't have the information that's available to make the best choices. And if we're not open, we're also less likely to be able to co-influence our environment, or to perhaps even encourage others to change. Our choices are limited, and our commitment to act on those choices is diminished when our choices are formed within a context that's familiar and that agrees with us. Being in relationship with one another, which is, whether it's within this congregation and particularly with the new members who joined us, or whether it's in some culturally unfamiliar environment or in our own neighborhoods or on the floors of our government houses, the ability to be in relationship is deeply dependent on being curious, on being open, on listening to one another. I grew up in a religion that taught that we should not be of this world in order supposedly to not be influenced by anything worldly. But to crave curiosity, to have it available to us in every moment, does not mean that the accompanying openness will change us against our will. Although next week we'll talk about the potential perils of curiosity. But no, we need not fear curiosity. We can embrace it as a tool that will move us along this path toward our aspirations, toward whatever it is that's luring us, to be curious about all that is around us that we may be of. Be part of this beautiful, unknowable world. Because being part of this world, we can aspire to the things we spoke of earlier, to live joyfully and ethically, to be in reverent relationship with humanity and nature, to pursue wisdom, to make the change we need for a more just and peaceful world, and to support one another right now in the here and now. I want to close with a reprise, an adaptation a bit of Gretchen Haley's words that we had in our opening words. She suggests that we surrender to the mystery, release ourselves from the need to know, release ourselves from yearning to have it all figured out, release ourselves from the burdensome belief that we either have all the control or none, and that here now we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. Here now, let us crave a curiosity born in the belief that a new world is possible and that we are creating it already, right now. Curiosity reveals the delicious ambiguity and the unrelenting not knowing of life. And I can hear it calling, calling to us to get lit up and to come alive. Don't you just crave that? May it be so.
Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.